I never imagined that a simple reunion could shatter everything I thought I had with Emma. She had invited me as her plus one, casually, almost like she was doing me a favor. "Just bring yourself," she had said. But there was something in her tone that already hinted at a kind of dismissal I hadn't noticed before. I shrugged it off at first. I thought maybe I was overthinking. But deep down, a quiet warning bell was ringing. The night of the reunion, I drove to the venue, wearing my best suit, rehearsing small talk in my head, preparing to smile, to laugh, to seem like I belonged. When we arrived, Emma's friends greeted us warmly, or so it seemed. But the glances, the tiny smirks, and the whispers that reached me as I passed by felt like tiny daggers I couldn't avoid. She introduced me quickly, brushing past me as if I were merely a shadow accompanying her. "This is my plus one," she said, almost reluctantly, like she had to explain why I was even there. The night unfolded like a series of tests I didn't know I had signed up for. Every joke she laughed at with her friends felt like a reminder of my invisibility. When a few people tried to engage me, she intervened, subtly steering the conversation away. I kept my composure, sipping my drink, nodding politely, reminding myself that control was still mine. By the end of the evening, I realized the reunion wasn't about us. It was about Emma showing the world, and perhaps herself, that I was just a decoration. A token. Something to fill a space. I had spent years believing that our relationship was built on partnership, respect, and trust. That night, each glance, each laugh at my expense slowly dismantled that illusion. We left the venue quietly. I expected a conversation, an explanation, maybe even a hint that she saw me as her equal. Instead, she said nothing, scrolling through her phone as if I wasn't even there. I stayed silent too, letting the tension build like a storm gathering on the horizon. Something inside me had shifted. A calm but sharp realization that the life I thought I shared with her might never have truly existed in her eyes. The next morning, I woke up expecting a conversation, a simple acknowledgement of what had happened the night before. Emma, however, was nowhere to be found. Her phone was off, and every message I sent was left unread. The more I tried to reach her, the more it became painfully clear. She had decided that I didn't exist. I replayed the previous night in my mind, dissecting every interaction, every laugh, every glance. How could someone treat you with such indifference after sharing years of life, hopes, and quiet victories together? The words she had spoken at the reunion, calling me just her plus one, echoed relentlessly in my mind. It wasn't just an insult, it was a declaration. I was invisible in her narrative. By noon, I realized I needed to take a step back, to understand the reality I was facing. My relationship with Emma had always been a delicate balance of love, trust, and mutual respect, or so I thought. That night had revealed the cracks that had been quietly forming over time. I wasn't just her partner. I was a placeholder, a companion to be shown, not to be seen. In my profession, I had learned to read between the lines, to detect subtleties, and to notice patterns others overlooked. That skill now applied to my personal life. Emma's actions, her deliberate avoidance, and the careful way she had framed her words were all pieces of a puzzle I hadn't wanted to see. And now, seeing it fully, I couldn't unsee it. I spent the afternoon in quiet reflection, walking through our apartment, noticing the small details I had ignored for years. The way she left her belongings, the subtle dismissals, the lack of warmth in everyday moments. Each detail reinforced the truth. I was no longer part of her world. She had created a separate space for herself, one in which I had no role. By evening, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and clarity. Sorrow for the loss of what I had believed we shared, and clarity that my own life deserved recognition, respect, and presence. I wasn't going to beg for acknowledgement. I wasn't going to exist in the margins of someone else's life, while they chose indifference as their companion. That realization, as painful as it was, marked the beginning of a shift I hadn't anticipated, but one I desperately needed. That night, I decided to wait. Not for her, but for clarity. I needed to see what she would do when faced with the absence of my presence, my patience, and my attention. The next morning, she returned, not with an apology, not with a conversation, but with the expectation that I would pick up where I had left off, as if nothing had happened. I looked at her calmly, without a word. The reunion, her words, her silence. All of it had crystallized into one undeniable truth. I was no longer invisible, but I was no longer willing to accept being treated as a footnote in her life. The Emma I thought I knew, the woman I had trusted with my time, my heart, and my quiet ambitions, had revealed herself fully in a single night. And now I had a choice. I simply said, "Emma, I'm not here to be anyone's plus one. I'm done being invisible." Her face froze, confusion and disbelief mixing with a hint of panic. For the first time, I saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes, not of love, but of realization. She had assumed I would always exist at her convenience, silently forgiving her slights and omissions. That assumption was gone. I gathered my coat, my bag, and stepped out into the cool morning air. There was no argument, no dramatic confrontation. The power of that morning was in its silence. The quiet statement that I valued myself, my presence, and my dignity above the hollow pretense of a relationship that had never fully acknowledged me. As I walked away, I felt a strange weight lift from my chest. The pain of betrayal, the sting of being reduced to a title or a convenience, was real, but so was the strength that came from refusing to accept it. Emma would eventually understand what she had lost. I didn't need to tell her. I didn't need to linger. My absence, the very thing she had used to define me as insignificant, had become my statement of worth. Later, as I reflected on that night and the morning that followed, I realized something profound. Relationships, no matter how long or seemingly secure, can only thrive when both parties see and honor each other. Anything less is merely a shadow of connection, a rehearsal for heartbreak. And sometimes, the only way to reclaim yourself is to step out of the shadow entirely, silent, composed, and unapologetically present for your own life. I never looked back. And in that silence, I discovered a freedom I hadn't known I was missing. A life where I existed fully, not as someone else's accessory, but as my own person.